trader. They've got about 12%, 12 to 13% of the company. The next largest shareholder would be a gentleman named Kevin Jennings, ex-CFO of Barrick Africa. He's a strategic advisor in the company. And then coming down the list, we've got Ross Beatty, that owns 5% of the company, and he's been participating in the last number of financings. Brad, just around here somewhere, he owns about 3%. We've got a number of institutions like Franklin Templeton just bought a position. They're at 9.9 now with the latest financing. Conway, Gold 2000, Phoenix Gold Fund, and many others. Eric Sprott's also in still for about 6%. We've got two major strategic partnerships. One's with Franco-Nevada, and that's an interesting one for us because they actually bought a royalty on the project prior to any resource being published. So that's about 18 months ago. Now, subsequent to that, we have published a resource, but they obviously saw something in the mineralized system. They did their own modeling to figure out what it was worth. They also put a bit of equity in. And then Ocean Partners coming in. That's a very strong strategic for us, and they're well acquainted with the area, and we've actually just sold our bulk sample mineralization to them. So I'm the president. We've got Brad, CEO of the company. We've both been with it. I've been with it about 8 years now, and Brad's been with it 10. Our most recent hire to management was Sean Massey. So Sean is a mining engineer. He's worked at a lot of different projects across BC. His most recent job was the GM of Brucejack, so he's there from Pretium into Newcrest and then Newcrest into Newmont. When Newmont sold their last mine, when they were selling all those mines, that team moved in and then Sean moved on after that. So we were very fortunate to get him. He's got an excellent experience in the area. He was also part of New Afton, building the underground there for New Gold. He was at Kemess Underground as well, and he was at Barkerville as well. So very well acquainted to BC mining. In the last 6 months, we've achieved all these things. So we have put out our first maiden resource on the project. That's in both the Blueberry and the Scottie Gold Mine. We've made this strategic partnership with Ocean Partners and really made the decision to go a DSO route. So I'm going to use the term DSO multiple times over this. That's a direct shipping ore. And so we're looking to ship a high-grade mineralized product overseas without doing the real metallurgy or gold extraction on our side. The concept is it'll go to a smelter in Asia eventually, and that's where the gold will be extracted. We put out a PEA. We put it out on a DSO model. So a PEA that's based on shipping gravel overseas, a gold-rich gravel product. So there's no mill, there's no tailings facility. It's a very simple project, and it's one that can get permitted quite quickly. And I'll walk you through why we see that as a likely scenario here. We've also given it some optionality to it. So many of you may be aware of Ascot Resources. They're just down the road from us. They have a mill and they have capacity in the mill. So we've also run the numbers to see what does it look like if this product, instead of going to the port, went through Ascot's mill. To kind of show this whole concept, we did a bulk sample this year. So we were permitted for a 10,000 ton bulk sample, and we've gone through that entire process. And I'll talk quite a bit about the bulk sample because it really points to the DSO model of the eventuality of what this project looks like in a few years' time. So for those that aren't aware, we're situated in the southern portion of the Golden Triangle. We're based out of Stewart, BC, so we're accessing that via Terrace. So we're flying into Terrace, driving up to Stewart, and then the project site is an hour drive north on an existing road called the Granduc Road. A lot of very prominent names in this area, a lot of world-class deposits, a variety of different types of deposit. Our closest analog in terms of the deposit model would be the Sniff Mine up to the north. Our two nearest neighbors are Newmont with the Brucejack mine to the north of us, and then to the south of us we've got Ascot Resources with the Premier Project there. We have a power line that goes within a kilometer of the project, so that's the Brucejack power line. It was a $45 million power line that they put in. Unfortunately, there's no capacity, or there's capacity, but there's no energy in the area to go. So the PEA is based on an LNG power production. There is a scenario where energy could become available if other projects in the area aren't operating. They have it kind of continuously set for those projects, but that's an optionality that we can look at as we proceed through feasibility and the permitting stages here. An interesting thing here is that Ascot has obviously gone back into care and maintenance, and they're trying to finance the mine. And one of their strategies to do so is to access the Red Mountain deposit. So the Red Mountain deposit is located over here, and their strategy to get the ore out of there, they actually put a road in through here to get there, and then they could basically drive the ore back down through the town of Stockwork and back up to Ascot. With that, that means we get a new road coming through this part of our project, and these white dots are all mineral showings, high cluster of them, so we get a nice new access point and a nice exposure along there as they put that road in, which we're expecting they're going to start doing that in April this year. They only have a little bit of time left on their environmental assessment if they want to keep it. Otherwise, they had to go back through it. They've already extended it once. Down in town of Stockwork, we've got a warehouse where we house all our geologists and we do all the logging and cutting and splitting. That's also where the deep water shipping port is. So there's a bulk shipping facility located there. That's where Brucejack and the Red Chris mines both ship their concentrates out of very regularly. It's the northernmost ice-free deep water shipping port on the west coast. That's where we plan to ship our material. That's where our bulk sample is sitting right now, and the ship is coming in the next few days to pick it up. And then from there, we go into Alaska. You go through Hyder, Alaska, and then back into Canada through here, and then the project is up here. From Scottie down to the port is a 40-kilometer road. It's the Granduc Road from the 1960s and 70s, so they were running a copper project, and they were shipping concentrate out of there. So the road is built for that. This is what the project site looks like. So in the 1980s, it was an underground mine called the Scottie Gold Mine. It was one of Don McLeod's very first mines. What it is a set of veins that outcrop at surface up through here, and they're striking more or less parallel with this image here. They outcrop at surface, and you can see, an alteration halo of a few meters on either side, but they're pure type pyrite-rich veins, so they're oxidizing very quickly at surface and quite evident. And they can be, 50 centimeters up to 4 meters of width at surface. And that's what the deposit was centered around. It was an entirely underground deposit when it was operating. So over here is the mill, so about 100 meters, 150 meters in there is the mill. They built a cavern underground. The next floor up was a crushing station as well as the power plant for the project. And then this is the main access into the mine. Now the area gets a very heavy snow load in the winter. So they built a tunnel over here called the A portal. It goes all the way through the mountain just to avoid the avalanche risk on this side of the mountain, that road going around there. Now the reason that they did so is that back in the 1980s, this entire lake bed was filled with water. So just downstream, off of screen here, is a large glacier that's since retreated enough to no longer dam up the lake, and then that lake now naturally floods out. So you're left with these streams and little puddles down here at the bottom. These are the two tailings piles that were deposited when the mine was in operation. So they were deposited subaqueously. The lake is now drained away. There's 2.1 grams a ton on average in the tails themselves. This was a very high-grade mine when it operated in the 80s. What we've done is made a discovery here at Blueberry. We call it the Blueberry Contact Zone. It's at the high point in the valley bottom, so it kind of watersheds off to the north and the south from there. And down here is the propagation of that contact. It's two lithologies that come together there, and the mineralization is focused right along that contact. From the Blueberry Contact Zone to the Scottie Gold Mine, that's a 2-kilometer distance. They're connected by both that road and that tunnel. In our new revised mine plan, we actually access the Scottie mine from down under the lake bed instead of going around the edge, so there'd be less avalanche risk during the operation in the winter. This is the Blueberry Contact Zone from surface. You can see there's phenomenal grades and strong widths here. It outcrops right at surface. There's multiple veins exposed at surface that we see. The most prominent was the Blueberry vein, which is the reason the property was purchased. But we've discovered since then subsequent veins to the north and south. And all those veins are locused right along this contact. The veins extend outwards from the contact, but the mineralization is really concentrated around the contact. It only goes about 40 meters on either side of the contact, and then it peters out. So it looks like there's a chemical or a structural trap that keeps the mineralization locused around that contact. So those two features, when they come together, give us the strongest and widest widths of the deposit. And that's what the underground portions of this deposit have been targeted around. Those intersections between that north-south, near vertical contact between Hazelton rocks, the unit formation. So there's a volcanic rock and a siltstone. So the volcanic is on the left side, which is a very well-known host rock in the area. That's what the Scottie Gold Mine is hosted in. On the right side is a siltstone, and it's more or less seems to be a dead rock in most areas, but the veins do propagate into it and run quite well in that side. So we get mineralization in about an 80-meter wide width up and down this contact, and that's what we've been targeting for the last number of years. This most recent year, we got to the point where we realized we had something economic. We weren't getting recognized for the discoveries that we were making on this, and we said, there's gotta be a pathway to reproduction here and a quick turnaround. That's where I was last year when we were here. We had chosen that we were gonna pursue this DSO operation, and that's kind of the next few milestones is what we predicate that around. So that was, the maiden resource, going with a very high grade resource, and then we're doing the PEA and then the subsequent bulk sample as well. In cross section, this is what the blueberry contact zone looks like. So the deepest holes that we've drilled on this target so far have been at 525 meters from surface. It's about a 700-meter hole, and we're hitting the structure there. That's just the deepest hole. We're still hitting the structure. We see the mineralization continuing at depth. The deposit style doesn't suggest that there's any vertical restriction on it. So this year, we do plan to go much deeper on the blueberry and show that it has much deeper potential on it, and show the blue sky potential. You can see there's a bit of a plunge here. That's the intersection between the veins, which are northeast trending and moderately dipping, intersecting with the plane that we're looking at. And right now, we're basically looking at the contact. So we're looking from the andesite into the siltstone. On top of here is the resource pit that we published in May this year. The PEA pit that we've redesigned is really focused up on the road zone to get a much higher grade open pit. And with that, we were able to capture more material underground at a higher grade for supporting the underground at Blueberry. Now we've got a lot of exploration potential down to the south, but it's just not drilled out enough to really constitute enough for the resource at this point. So the bulk of the resource is here, and it's usually about in the top 350 meters of this. And once again, it goes right to surface. So you start with an open pit, and then you go underground at Blueberry. You'd be coming down from the south, going towards the north of the mine plan. When we go over to the Scottie Gold Mine, so we're 2 kilometers away at this point, this operated in the early 80s. It only operated for 3.5 years. And the problem with the mine was really fundamentally the gold price and the economic setting. So they took a $20 million loan to start the mine at 22% interest, and then the gold price plummeted over the next 3.5 years from $700 down to less than $300, and the Royal Bank of Canada foreclosed on the mine. And it kind of just sat around for a number of years after that until we had a big reconsolidation effort in 2016 to 2019, gathering up properties and putting them all together. Now when it produced, it was a high grade producer. The average recovered grade was 16.2 grams per ton. There's 2.1 in the tailings. The head grade for this mine was 18 to 20 grams a ton over the life of mine, and they produced just under 100,000 ounces. They had built a 200 ton per day mill underground with that, and then the mine permit was M139. That mine permit still lives with the project. So it's in care and maintenance right now, and that's our pathway to production here. That's how we're going to permit this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But when they were operating, they had a 10 gram per ton cutoff. So anything less than 10 grams was considered waste when this mine operated, which is obviously quite a high grade system now. So that was the obvious targeting start to the project. While we were discovering new mineralized zones at Scottie, that's when we made the Blueberry discovery. Now Scottie requires helicopter access to drill it, but Blueberry is all skid based, so it was a lot cheaper, and we could get a lot more done with that. Last year we kind of went back into Scottie for the first time for a few years and drilled a number of holes, predicating that we were going to put out this resource. So we put out the resource this year with the Scottie Gold Mine, the Blueberry, and then there's a small vein just to the north of that called the Bend Vein as well. When they shut down this mine, they had about 2 years of reserves ahead of them at over 10 grams a ton at their current production. So there was a sizable amount of deposit that was still there. They were at face essentially when they shut down the mine at over 10 grams a ton. So we saw this as a huge opportunity to continue exploring. The drilling that we've done, we've identified 2 new zones. So we just put out a drill release just a couple days ago or yesterday on the P zone. So that was another nice hit. That was a discovery we made to the north. Almost all the drilling that we've done has been north to south, just given the topography, but as well as the aspect of the veins. They dip slightly to the north. But last year we drilled our first holes from the south to the north and made a discovery there we call the Wolf Zone. So that runs about 6/6 through there. We followed that up with additional drilling. We haven't released them yet. They were drilled in the middle of the season, so we're getting close to being able to release them as those assays keep coming back to us. But all in all, we see expansion potential at the Scottie Gold Mine, obviously, as we get going. And really the concept with the company is get in production as fast as we can and use that cash flow to find the rest of the ounces. We have an over 2 million ounce target on the project in total. Right now we're sitting at about 700,000 ounces in a resource. So that resource looks like this. This is the one we published in May this year, so 700,000 ounces. The average grade between open pit and underground between both targets, Blueberry and Scottie, is 6.1 grams a ton. You can see here we've got the Blueberry pit constrained mineralization at grades 3 grams. That's going to change when I show you the PEA because we've tightened up that pit to make it smaller and higher grade. And then the combined underground grade is 8.6. That's similar to where we're at now as well under PEA. So the total inferred 6.1 at 700,000 ounces. Now we were targeting a 1 million ounce, kind of our initial goal. With the DSO, we made a shift. We could have gotten 1 million ounces essentially with a large open pit, but it would have been a large open pit with lower grade and higher dilution. To make a DSO project work, you need high grades to justify the shipping costs, but then you don't have to pay the capital to develop the mill and the tailings facility, so it's a trade-off in terms of simplicity and operational success. So with the DSO, how it works is we're looking at mining at site, essentially operating a gravel quarry. We're going to crush it at site, and then we're going to run it through an ore sorter, and then the ore sorter is going to strip out a certain percentage of the material, and then it's going to be driven down to the Port of Stewart where it's shipped. The buyer of that is Ocean Partners. So the most recent financing they did with us, so they gave us about $6 million, which we converted it via charity flow-through. They also gave us $25 million construction cost overrun facility, that's a US figure. And what they got in return was an offtake agreement for the deposit, which also gave us all the contract terms for what they would eventually pay for this product. Now the bulk sample was excluded from that, but we do know what the payables are for this project, and the bulk sample was very, very close to exactly the payables for our final product here. So we know who's going to purchase it, we know how it operates, and with the bulk sample we've shown that this process will work on the project. The interesting thing with Ocean Partners, we took it out to market to see who would be interested in buying this product. What they offered that none of the other traders offered is what they do is blending at destination. So they buy a product, they ship it to their warehouse facility in Taiwan, they then blend that product with other products and then sell that onto the smelter. And they make their money by reducing like the nasty elements like arsenic and mercury and things like that by diluting them out with other products that don't have that in there, or upgrading them by adding gold or silver credits in them so that they're payable. So at a certain level, it's not payable from a smelter. So they're making an ideal product, and they're kind of capturing the value gap between what they're paying a customer and what they're selling to the smelter. Our advantage was they were looking for an investment rationale to build a ball mill in Taiwan. So right now, they're only taking concentrate materials that are finely ground flour, blending them together. But there's a lot of off-spec material, as you would call it, stuff that's coarser grain that they get access to, but you can't feed directly into a smelter. With our project, we're a significant amount of tonnage of this off-spec material, and we were enough to justify them building out a ball mill in Taiwan. So them agreeing to the offtake agreement and providing the investment into it really justifies them to build out that ball mill so that they have the material that they can then start this process. Once they have the ball mill in place, then they can take other off-spec material from other places and mix it in with their concentrates. They mix up to 20 different products together to sell to smelters. So we went over and visited their facility and understand the process that they're operating now. We currently have the M139 mine permit. Now there's two main permitting pathways in BC that you operate under. There's the EAO route, like an EA route, and then there's a joint permit amendment application, which is taking an existing mine permit and then amending it with all the other ancillary permits to get to your final permit. We have the advantage of having that existing mine permit, and the disturbance that we have proposed for this new mine plant is within a realm of you don't need to apply for a new EA. The project doesn't get big enough to justify a brand new EA. which is a huge amount of complexity and costs associated with this. The joint permit amendment application is the same route that Ascot went through in order to permit their mine. And the First Nations are very happy operating in the process as well, because their values get taken care of when we operate through that joint permit amendment application. This is what the PEA mine plan looks like now. So not a lot of infrastructure at site. You've got a camp, you've got a shop, warehouse, and a power plant, so that would be LNG, and it's about 6 megs of power. You've got the open pits for Blueberry, which would only operate for about the first year and a half. You've got the ore sorting plant here. And then the largest surface disturbance would actually just be the waste rock storage facility. You don't have tailings, this is just crushed rock that's 3 to 4 inches in kind of size that would be stored there. But that's the largest superficial disturbance that's kind of long-lived. Everything else is largely modular equipment. And then the road goes down to the south, and it goes into the Scottie Gold Mine. The ore sorting plant is pictured here, so you're loading it into a hopper here. It's a dry process. You're crushing it to 3 or 4 inch minus pieces. You're running it down a conveyor belt. You're running it through dual XRF ore sorters. You're stripping out about 50% of the waste, and you're only losing about 5% of the gold. So your recovery is about a 95% recovery, and your mass pull is about 50%. So the grade of the remaining product almost doubles when you do that, and you cut 50% of the material that you're shipping out at the same point. So very important with the DSO operation. This is what the Blueberry mine plan looks like. So we would start with the open pit, which is here. So it's now just at the north end of the structure. 3 small open pits in sequence, as well as the Bend vein, which is a little bit further north, which is where we got our bulk sample from. So you're operating those, and you're going to operate those with contract mining. So you're not buying the mining equipment, you're just leasing it all through this mine contractor, where you're basically paying on a per ton basis. At the same time, you're starting your development ramps here at Blueberry Underground, so that by the time the pits are finished, you're well into the underground at Blueberry for production there. So the open pit grade now is boosted to 7.71 grams a ton, and that is before ore sorting. So you're almost getting a double on that when you're selling it. The gold standard when you're sending things ore sorting to Taiwan is you're trying to avoid the Chinese VAT tax. So anything that you're shipping above 15 grams per ton avoids the VAT tax, and you get an extra step up in payability. So the more material that we ship at above 15, the more money we pay. So the open pit essentially de-risks the entire project. It pays for the underground development at Blueberry. It also pays back the mine in 1.2 years. And the pricing for that is at $2,600 gold. When you look at it at a higher gold price, that drops dramatically down. And I'll show you some numbers associated with that. The underground right now is grading now 6.9 grams per ton underground at Blueberry. And these are those vein sheets at the intersection between that contact and the veins cutting across there. We would also do contract mining for the underground. What we're aiming for is a very simple cost variable process that we can manage the fixed costs on, and that is operationally quite simple to manage with not a lot of investment up front. The Scottie Gold Mine plan, so we would go in this subsequent, so as the pits close, the camp capacity opens up, and then we start the underground development at Scottie. Now right now, everything is planned as entirely new development. The existing tunnels and adits at Scottie are too small for modern equipment for the long hole stoping mining that we want to do there. There is an opportunity to reutilize some of those through rehabbing, but just to be on the conservative side, we've modeled everything as new development at Scottie. One of the factors that we need to get in order to go to feasibility level to understand if there is an option of reutilizing some of that is we need to get a much more detailed understanding of the existing stopes and underground tunnels in the mine. And so we're going to plan to do that this year through 3D underground drone surveys and just regular traditional surveying as well, where we get in and access the mine to understand the shapes of the deposits. There's a conservative buffer built on all mineralization that we had from the past around this to avoid any future constraints. But if we can get really good detailed imaging of what was there in the past, we're able to close the gap with that buffer and add more mineralization back into the system that we believe is there. The DSO financials, so this is done at $2,600 US gold, $3,400, and then $4,200 gold. So with that, you go from an NPV of $215.8 million all the way up to $668 million at that gold price. So, and this is below spot today as well, just to consider. The overall capital expenditure to build this is $130 million Canadian. And we're sitting at an NPV of that, and we're trading at about $130, $140 million market cap today. The mine life is set at, currently with the resource we have, at 7 years. It's about 2.19 million tons of material to be moved, that's milled. And then the average grade ends up to 6.8 grams per ton. And the gold recovery, because of that ore sorting, is 94.7. Because it's eventually going into a smelter, you know, the recovery, the metallurgy, that's not a component that really matters to us. It's not a factor on the DSO proper. Now I'm going to talk about toll milling in a second. But an interesting thing with the Ocean Partners offtake agreement is the way that we get paid on contained metal when we ship it. So we load up the ship, we estimate the number of tons, we estimate the grade, and then we get a provisional payment of 90% of that value of the contained metal at whatever payability we've agreed to with Ocean Partners. And we receive that 5 days after the bill of lading is filed. So the ship is off in the ocean, and we receive 90% of the value of that product. Then, when the ship gets to Taiwan, they resample it, and we receive the remaining 10%, and they kind of buffer it based on, you know, if the grades end up higher or lower, the tonnage is the same, but that's kind of the variance that we get. The same thing will happen with our bulk sample. So that's being shipped in the next few days. Within, you know, 2 weeks of today, we are going to receive the bulk of the financing associated with that bulk sample, so 90% of the provisional value of it. So very low working capital costs associated with this, and no recovery challenges associated with the deposit either. So if the metallurgy doesn't work out, it's not on us. It's going into a smelter where they get fantastic recoveries. Now, down to the road south of us, on the way to the port, is Ascot Resources Premier Project. So we drive by it when we're trucking material down. So 20 kilometers from us is Ascot, and then another 20 to this. So this is half the distance to get to Ascot. If we run a scenario where we toll mill the material through there, and what we've done for estimating costs is taken their feasibility study, we've estimated their operating cost for the mine, we've given them a premium on top of that, and then a recovery discount as well. So they're not expected to recover as much as they should be able to recover, so they get a bit of a benefit for having better recoveries, and then they receive a premium on the operating cost for this. When you run the numbers through that, it adds an NPV of about $150 million to the base case scenarios at all those pricing. And the reason is, it's all the shipping costs and the payability of the structure with Ocean Partners that comes off of this, and this works for both partners. Right now, Ascot's biggest challenge is having enough ore to run through their mill. So it's a 2,500 ton a day mill that was built to operate an open pit and underground scenario at the same time. They are trying to pull through multiple sources from just underground material, and they struggled to get enough material. So they are going to have capacity at that mill to operate with something like Scottie coming down the road. We currently have no agreement in place with Ascot. There's a lot of things moving in the neighborhood right now, but it is an opportunity that we're watching very carefully. A toll milling agreement with them would be fantastic for us, because we'd be able to realize that variation. So going from $670 million to an $830 million NPV variation, just by having a toll milling agreement in place. And then there's opportunity as well within this toll milling scenario of optimization. So two of the things that are very obvious is you could mine a lower grade material and get more tonnage out of Ascot, or out of Scottie right now if you were going to ship it to Ascot. You may not even want to do the ore sorting to lose that 5% recovery if you want to ship more material. It's all just kind of a variable economic study to be made at whatever gold price you're at. You could mine more open pit at Scottie to get more material that way to help fill the mill. In terms of resource upside, so I mentioned before that we are targeting more than 2 million ounces on the project. We've been exceedingly successful at drilling this project. We've been very careful and diligent and very pragmatic in respect with how we've spent capital over the last 6 or 7 years. What we've discovered at a 30,000 level view is all the deposits that we've drilled and discovered, all of which have more than 10 grams a ton in them, intercepts, are all around the outside edge of an intrusion. So the colors aren't coming through here very well, but there's an intrusion in the northwest. It's pink in color, and the boundary between the intrusion and the other rock types is kind of coming around there. And all these deposits around just within a few hundred meters of that contact. That's the first order control on all mineralization that we see. And the style of mineralization looks very similar between all these different zones. It all looks like it's the same mineralizing event. So that's a 6-kilometer belt of deposits, and every one of these outcrops right at surface. That's been our leading vector towards discovery, is basically we see high-grade mineralization outcropping at surface, and then we drill underneath it and keep chasing it down as it gets bigger and bigger. What we've not done is done any blind geophysical targets in between any of these structures. We've started with something at surface. The next most logical place to look is start between these different zones that we've already identified and expanding those out, as well at the same time as just expansionary drilling along strike and at depth within existing zones that we already know about. That's where we get our 2 million ounce target for it. Michael Gray with the Gentis, he sees 3 million ounces with this target. But for years we were at about a $40–50 million market cap, and the justification to keep drilling and drilling and drilling and not receiving any benefit was lacking. So this is why we've taken this turn towards development to realize that, and it's, the market's already recognizing that. So that's the pathway we're progressing along. These ones up here are zone discoveries that are in the resource. These are ones that are not in the resource. So things like C and D, like 36 grams over 5 meters, 30 over 4. We have high-grade mineralization of obvious targets on the same similar structures and same mineralizing style that aren't yet advanced enough to put into a resource. But this is where we want to expand and go forward on. One of the most exciting for me, I think, it's the one that has the biggest game-changing opportunity that we see, is Domino. So it's on the other side of the mountain to Scottie. So Scottie is over here, you go up over the mountain and you come down the other side, and that's Domino. We drilled that in 2020 and 2021, had a little bit of success. We got some nice intercepts there, I think 2.5 grams over 15 meters, and then 12 grams over 2.7 meters. Those are strong hits. But at the same time, we were drilling like 11 meters of 15 grams at Blueberry. It was a very easy decision to say, well, we're going to focus on Blueberry, we don't need a helicopter. But this is an area we really like and we want to come back to. What we've discovered is we've got an 800 to 900 meter length structure here that's oriented in the same orientation as Scottie on the other side of the mountain. It's got a parallel structure here as well. We've got high-grade mineralization all throughout this that's been grab sampled. We've got this huge EM anomaly that sits right underneath the glacier over there. A lot of smoke in this area, and we have under-drilled it by every metric you can imagine. But we've been having so much success on the other side of the mountain that it's justified it up to this point. We've now got enough money that we can allocate more money to exploration in addition to our current objectives of advancing the production scenario for the company at this point. So we'll be going into Domino this year and drilling some more expansion-related exploration type holes. One thing I want to show here, this is Domino taken from a cross-section. It's a weird angle to cut a cross-section, so Domino's here, Scottie Gold Mine's here, we got C and D, and then you got Blueberry. So the section's coming through this area here. And what I want to show you here is just the vertical extent that we see. There's no major faults in between these that show any vertical dispositioning along this structure. We've drilled Blueberry down to 525 meters, and we still see the mineralizing depth, and we're going to go below that, probably another 100 plus meters this year, just to establish that. Then you've got Scottie, that's not quite as deep as Blueberry, and it's got room to go at depth as well. Scottie's becoming more difficult to drill at depth just because they're longer and longer holes to hit that. Most of the drilling at Scottie has been from underground in the past to get to those deeper intervals. Domino, on the other hand, we're right up here on the top of the mountain. This is where we're getting those 2.7 meters of 12 gram material intercepts. To get to the base of Blueberry, that's a 1,500 meter gap, and so we know that there's an opportunity there. And then there's a lot of white space in between here along this section of where we could see mineralization. So we see a lot of exploration potential in the entire system, both on a surface plan view, you can envision it, but also at depth. There's a lot of opportunity for this high-grade mineralization. the plan, if you were to find enough justifiable material at Domino to mine underground, you would basically just run a ramp up towards Domino underground, so you wouldn't have to circle around the other side of the mountain to access it. It would be an underground target at Domino that we would be pursuing. Now, what we've done in the last year, so we drilled our largest drill program ever. We've probably released around 40% of those drill holes now. So we drilled 27,000 meters. A lot of it was focused on infill drilling, so converting inferred to indicated ounces. We need indicated in order to run a feasibility study. So the plan with the company is to go after a feasibility study, which is required for our permitting to get in production. The biggest step of that is that conversion of inferred to indicated in order to keep it in a feasibility study. We did all the mine design engineering at a PEA level and started to scope what the next stage for that is. We did a phase 2 ore sorting study. So the PEA was based off of a phase 1 ore sorting study. The phase 2, we took a much larger sample, it was an 800 kilogram sample, and we shipped it off to South Africa to run through a full-scale Rados XRF machine, as well as Saskatchewan Research Council to run through a TOMRA XRT machine to see if those two technologies worked. So we'll be getting those results back kind of any day eminently, and probably releasing them early in the new year, so we've had time to interpret those. So those phase 2 ore sorting studies, those are done at a feasibility level, and so those will be inputs to the feasibility study. We did the PEA this year, but we also did feasibility level geotechnical studies. So when we stepped back at the very start of the program and we said, okay, what do we need to do to get to a feasibility? What is the longest lead time item to get in production? What became evident was permitting was the longest lead time item. And in terms of engineering, it was the underground mine design was the longest time, because you don't have a mill, you don't have metallurgy to sort through, you don't have the tailings, you don't have to worry about any of that. It was the mine design engineering, and geotechnical was the largest component of that. So we put about $1 million this year into geotechnical engineering, well above the PEA standard, so that'll feed into the feasibility. And then most importantly, we initiated the environmental baseline studies. So that is our critical path right now. We need 2 years of environmental baseline studies to submit the mine permit application. So that started, so in 2027, we will be done the baseline studies and be able to submit the mine permit application. And then we did this bulk sample, and this was quite interesting. So we applied for the bulk sample in January last year. So the whole process will have taken just 1 year to complete this bulk sample. We were issued the permit in July. Honestly, it was a little bit easier than a drill permit. It was an amendment to one, but this was much simpler than we thought it was going to be. We were permitted for 10,000 tons. I don't know people in the audience, but when I heard 10,000 tons, it didn't seem that big when relative to a mining operation. But when we started crunching the numbers, we're like, this is a little bit bigger than we were expecting. It ended up being that we mined 10,000 tons, because that's what the permit is, but we extracted 4,500 tons of ore. So the 10,000 tons set the mined volume that you could get, and then the 4,500 tons is what the extracted amount of ore in that was. When you have a 40-ton gravel truck, you know, that's over 100 truckloads that have to go down the mine, down the road. So we mined it. We did it in 2 blasts. So the project site here, the vein is basically oriented like that. There's the pit that we drilled out. And then there's a flat laydown here where we separated ore and waste out between the two of them. And then we backfilled all the waste back in here. So we had a geologist on site. She had been with the project for the last 3 or 4 years. She had done her undergrad thesis on this vein that outcrops. So she was there with the excavator operator saying, like, that bucket's ore, that bucket's waste, and kind of pile for pile. And she did a fantastic job. The grade reconciliation worked out quite well for us. We were estimating within 1.5 grams of where we ended up. So the ended grade ended up being 15.8 grams per ton gold. And that's without any ore sorting. We jaw crushed it at site. So we hired a local gravel quarry operator. So he came in with his own drill, drilled it, blasted, he arranged the trucking. They trucked it down the road, and then they ran it through a cone crusher. So the final product was a 1/2 inch minus material that we had. This is the pile down in the warehouse in Stewart. So this will be here for another couple days, and it gets put onto a ship. So it ended up 4,588 wet tons of material with about a 3% moisture content, just over an ounce of silver. So this was we didn't expect this much silver. I mean, it's not a ton of silver, but in general, our gold to silver ratio is about a 1-to-1. So every gram of gold has a gram of silver kind of on the overall database. Individual veins have variations, and this one actually was fortunate enough to be higher. The payability only starts at 30 grams a ton, so it was nice to be above that, so we actually get paid for this silver. If it had been like 25 grams a ton, we wouldn't have received any money for the silver on this. And that's the gap that these metal traders make. So just picture the scenario where we send off them a product that has 25 grams a ton, and they mix it with somebody that has 100 grams a ton, so when they come together, the average is above 30 grams a ton, so they receive benefit from that when it goes to a smelter. That's how they make the differential, and why they're interested in high-grade gold products like this that don't have a lot of arsenic or don't have any mercury, so that they can dilute other products that have high mercury or arsenic in them down. We were able to sell this at 4,100, so just kind of the timing of things. Gold had kind of come down off its peak during the summer. We were down around 4,000, and then it started climbing, and we set the pricing at $4,100, and the silver price at almost 50. And this will generate about $9 million in net revenue. So all the blasting, all the shipping, everything like that, that's already accounted for. And so we're estimating after the provisional payment and the additional 10%, we'll have a net $9 million. And so the bulk of that, 90% of that, we should have in our accounts in the next 2 weeks. This represents 9 days of DSO production. So if we ran the mine plan we look at, this represents that. One of the important things is, this truckloads. So that was a lot of trucks to get down the road. We did it in about 10 days. We've shown now that the road is already at a level that you can ship that much material. We did a bunch of road work this year. We graded the roads. And then when the trucks went back up the road, the town of Stewart bought gravel so that we could lay it over the road. So we improved the Granduc Road as well when we were doing that. So with our pathway here now, so we're at the end of 2025. We've put out the resource. We've completed the PEA. We've started the baseline studies. Next year, we're going to initiate the feasibility study. We're going to work through the baseline studies still. And then in 2027, we look to submit the mine permit application. So we're going to have all the baseline data, all the engineering study, this feasibility written. We're expecting the feasibility study to be done in early 2027. So that'll be the next resource update for the project. And then we're looking to be in production in 2028. The mine is an open pit with veins that outcrop at surface. There's no pre-strip. It's just like the bulk sample. Like we are scooping up material, we're crushing it, and then we're shipping it off. We're going to have shipments out months after we've started this mine up in 2028. The First Nations, obviously an important question on any project in northern BC and in Canada right now. We're very fortunate. We are south of the Tahltan boundary, so we are in the Nisga'a Nation, the only treaty nation in BC right now. Very good business partners. They are, they're quite advanced in terms of negotiation and business development. They have LNG as their primary source of income right now and a lot of development, so they're fully employed. They are pro-mining. They are supporters of Ascot. Right now we're in an IBA negotiation with them to understand what that looks like going forward, but there's a lot of proxies in the area for this. So we're well in hand, and we've hired many of the consultants that got the permitting through Ascot and the First Nation agreements with Ascot as well to get us through this. We do have 2 other nations, so the Gitniao, but their claims are on their claim overlaps our claims that are to the east, so not the proper Scottie Gold Mine Project that we were talking about today, and then the Skikimaka, which is about a 50-person band with a claim over top of Scottie as well. They are pad builders during the summer, so we've already engaged them for the last 2 years building pads and have a great relationship with them as well. That's the end of my formal presentation, but open to questions here, guys. Thank you. Yes?
Will there be another bulk sample in 2026?
Oh, I get that. I mean, Brad would like to be a bulk sample mining company. But you can do one every 5 years.
Oh, is that the rule?
That's the rule, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question. Right in front of me is you see that printout for May 31, 2025.
Okay.
And the total assets is nowhere near what you're claiming. Did most of that money show up since that filing?
Yeah, so there was a financing in late August, early September.
Okay.
which is Ross Beatty came in there, and a number of other existing shareholders bought in, and then we did the $24 million financing that just closed last week.
So you had two?
We've had two, yeah. The first one was planned.
So this is way out?
This is way off,
Yeah,
yes,
it's way
yes,
off.
way off.
That's wonderful news,
Yeah.
because we're shareholders.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
We're looking at your shares, which haven't really jumped that much for all this money coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, we've doubled since the first financing came in through this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was done at,
doubled.
it was at 88 cents, and now,
Yeah.
we're about $1.70, I think, today.
Well, those congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you for being a good shareholder of ours. Yeah.
Yes.
You said you tightened up the open pits to get a higher grade?
Yes.
Tonnage? Does that leave you options to lay back afterwards? Sounds like the tightening up will basically be upfront revenue.
Exactly.
Basically cover everything, will you be able to lay back afterwards and grab the other?
We are looking at that, like, there's a crown pillar question on how we deal with the crown pillar at the south end, to get the open pit further to the south.
Yeah.
I think the big question for me, and we'll be doing trade-off studies at the feasibility level, is if we were to get a toll milling agreement, we would definitely want to look at a larger pit to the south. The average grade of the pit to the south is more like 2.5 grams a ton, so it dilutes it down, but it would still be cost-effective to do so. But you do sacrifice the light trade-off that we did at the PEA level was where that crown pillar is, because it sterilizes quite a bit of mineralization in itself. And so looking at ways we can maybe excavate afterwards.
I'm gonna guess those ounces are probably toll milling type ounces, they're not direct ship,
I would think so, yeah. I mean, at 4,200, it's all,
Everything's
all
going.
yeah, you can ship anything at 4,200.
And that's, the offtake is for all the ounces currently?
All the ounces that will be in the feasibility
In the
study,
feasibility.
which is basically all the ounces you see here,
Yeah.
but they do not have access to the ounces. Like if we found 2 million ounces,
Yeah.
they only get the ounces in the feasibility. Yeah.
And I'd like to also say that on that point is with Ocean Partners, they recognize the opportunity with Ascot. So they're very, why we went with Ocean Partners, they're flexible. They're our largest shareholders, so they're gonna make money either way if we don't go to Taiwan. They're supportive of that and real easy to get out of that. I don't think we will. We're very aligned with them, but we do have that optionality. If that mill, like Frank Juster just said he's putting 150 million into that mill, they're gonna try and get it going. We'll let them get their feet under them, but when they look at those numbers, I imagine that there'll be real conversations. So Ocean Partners is open to that, and it's really not difficult. We can buy that contract out for $2 million, and even if we didn't, there's a penalty of $4 a ton. So it's just economics. So they're pleasure.
And is Ocean tied in with Ascot at all?
No, not at all. And we're Ocean Partners' largest gold position. So they're aggressive around the world right now. They're making a lot of news, supporting a lot of companies, but we are their largest investment today.
And one of their CEO came on the board of Scottie as well, so they
Well,
have
that's
a
right.
board
And,
seat as well.
yeah, President and CEO is on our board, so pleasure to have him and that knowledge.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Looking at that great pile of rock you're gonna ship out, however can you figure out the average grade of the gold in that pile of rock which is going on the ship?
Yeah.
And you're gonna get paid for it.
So-
And you've got a nugget effect which could make way much more gold in there than you're suspecting.
So, yeah, there's some variability associated with that. So the way we did that was once it was crushed the first time to like blocks, we took samples of that and kind of did about 30 samples, and just to have an idea of where we were at before we crushed the rest of it and got it down the mine. And so that turned out very well. So then we crushed it, we trucked it down the hill, so you're mixing it.
That's to those little bits. Though.
Yeah, but well, we're crushing it to 3 or 4 inch pieces, okay? So every one of these steps, I say, helps mix things together, which is what you're trying to do to get the homogeneous. So we crush it, then we put it in trucks, and you truck it down the road, drop it off, then you run it through a cone crusher, which it takes it to 1/2 inch minus, and then you put it back on a truck and take it to the warehouse and put it in there. And then we went around the warehouse and just randomly selected piles of it and took about 2 kilogram samples from it, so about 32 kilogram samples. And then we did an analytical technique called photon assay. So most of the drill core assay results that you guys see in mineral exploration right now, most of them would be fire assay. And ultimately what you're doing is taking a rock, you're crushing it down to about a 30-gram sample, taking 30 grams from that kilogram, and then you're doing this technique, and you're really only assaying about 30 grams, and you're hoping that's representative of the rest of the material.
Right. Yeah.
Photon assay is a new technique, and what they do there is they put it into a small container, crushed, it's not powdered, it's crushed, and it's 500 grams then. And they're analyzing the entire 500 grams for gold. So you get about 10 times more representative sample size for it. And so with the homogeneity introduced from all those steps, the grain size is now been reduced to ½ inch, and then the larger sample size for it, we think we're closer to the average grade that we can expect at the end of this process.
So are you happy with those numbers?
16 grams, yeah, all day long. Yeah.
And you're not missing anything?
I hope not. I mean, if it goes up, if it's 17 by the time they sampled on the other end, then we make up that variation as
Did they
well.
ever tell you?
We have a third-party umpire there
Oh,
watching
okay.
over it. So they have a lab company, and we have a guy just watching, and we're collecting samples at the same time. So if we don't like their numbers, then we get to re-assay those.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's very that part of the process. I didn't talk quite about that. That part of the process was a big learning curve for us, was how to ship this product and all the contracts associated with it. It's very common in the concentrate world, but our product was a little bit off spec, so it was a little bit weird from that aspect, and learning about all these regulations and how this contract goes. The other thing I forgot to mention was with the bulk sample, we learned, about that side of it. We learned about the logistics of how we're gonna mine and ship it, but we also got a lot of technical specifications from it as well. So one of the biggest ones is, how does this material actually grind, and what's the comminution properties of it? Because with the DSO model, our big input here is breaking the rock dry and then putting it through the ore sorter. And one of the biggest unknowns in the deposit when we started was, when you crush the rock, how much of the portion of the rock is then too fine to run through an ore sorter? So you can only sort out certain size fragments. It's either too big or too small. It's mostly the fines, as we call them, that was the problem. And the blanket number is about 25% of whatever you're crushing ends up too small to sort. And because you're not sorting it, you're not high grading it, and you're not stripping out the waste. Our comminution suggests that just using all the regular equipment, it's about a 21% fine, so it was better than expected, better than modeled initially. And then we've shown if there's a couple ways that we can optimize that. So we're looking at other crushing techniques for the feasibility to further improve that.
Do those fines get shipped?
Yeah, so the plan currently in the mine is just to mix them back in. So just if you said you have 10-gram material, we run it through an ore sorter, you're taking out half the waste, so you're upgrading it 20 grams, but then you're mixing back in fines that are 10 grams a time. They're 10 grams. So you're mixing 10-gram material, but it's only about 25% back in, so your end up grade is 12.5, 13%.
Are you running a water treatment plant for the seepage and runoff from the waste rock storage facilities?
Yep, there is a water treatment. I think that we've allocated $13 million, and the baseline studies are going to dictate what process goes in that water treatment plant over the feasibility.
Do you have any free gold risk?
So we've been drilling it for 7 years. I think we've got about 15 accounts of visible gold in the project. Very rare to see visible gold. There is free gold, but it's microscopic and it's well disseminated within that structure. So it's not very common. It's 20 to 30 micron gold.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not.
And it's not refractory either. We have done the metallurgical work of what it looks like through Ascot, and we get low mid-90s in the recovery. With the feasibility study, that's a trade-off study. We'll look at it. What's the improvement in metallurgy if we were to toll mill it as well? Because that'll further boost those toll milling numbers.
Do you have a smelter penalty at all? Is there?
Well, we're not paying the smelter penalty. We're just selling it to Ocean Partners. So we don't see any of that penalty. That's for them to blend it out on their side.
But do you think there's any arsenic? Or any
In the bend vein, there was more arsenic than the rest of the deposit, but we're not getting penalized on our payable structures for the arsenic.
No, but the end customer have that issue.
Ocean Partners would blend it out with another dilutionary source, and their goal is to never pay a penalty.
Yeah, of course.
They'll charge other clients for the penalty, though.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad, I mean, I'm hoping to get out into January to round up, so congrats on your upcoming
Thank you.
award there. I actually was a project geologist for Cominco Metals and exploration for the SNP in '89.
Okay.
And so it's interesting you have an analogy to that epithermal mesothermal type structure.
Yeah.
And of course we had skyline above us back in the day then. I also went off with exploration up to Galore Creek area, so I'm curious if if you don't ship bulk and this Ascot gets developed, would there be potential for credits? Because we were looking for VMS over there, like copper, lead, zinc and stuff. Would there be other credits that you'd be giving up right now?
So in the Blueberry contact zone, as we go further to the south, silver gold ratio changes. We get a lot more silver in the system, and zinc starts coming in the system.
Right.
We haven't drilled for that yet.
Yeah.
We've been focusing on the gold only, but there's an opportunity there if you wanted to get into that.
And is that road, Stuart Hyder, is that up along the side of the Salmon Glacier there?
Yep. Yeah. So the Salmon Glacier was the one I was talking about that dams that used to dam the lake.
So I'm talking 35, 37 years ago I was up there. So are you saying that's melted back and you're putting a road in?
No.
I missed where you said there was a tunnel due to the heavy snow load, which I get in probably mudslides or whatever, rock slides. But you're gonna put a road in, or would you reuse this tunnel that's there
No,
to
it's
dodge
just-
all the weather?
No, it's on the same road. It's just that we would be able to access the lake bed up and around Scottie now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
Sorry,
same-
I just couldn't picture, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for another good presentation.
Thank you.
I'm interested in learning a little bit more about that tree agreement in where you're gonna be shipping from a deep water port in the BC,
Yeah.
not too far from the project, and that after 5 days after the bill of lading,
Yeah.
you will be getting the 90% of that cash
Yeah.
money, and the 10% at the discharge port. But I'm interested in learning a little bit if the production of the mine
Yeah.
or the project will be enough to be able to fully load one of those deep water port vessels.
Yeah.
Or there are another project in the vicinity or another competitors of your company that will be sharing a shipment to Asia.
Yeah.
And also, I'm interested, I saw the figure of half an inch of the pile
Yeah.
that you have to be sold.
Yep.
Is that the number of crushing that is the requirement for that type of commercial pre-agreement? Or you have to go to the level of a ball mill and that kind of more crushing?
Okay, I'll step those. Okay, so the crushing that we did for the bulk sample is more than we need in our regular offtake agreement. In the regular offtake agreement, we only have to crush it to 3 to 4 inch minus to send it to them. So then they deal with the ball mill. They deal with all the crushing and comminution on their end. So they're building one in Taiwan. So we don't have to worry about that. In our contract, it's only we have to crush to 3 or 4 inch minus material. As far as the shipping goes, it's a wide range of ships and sizes of berths that you can get. With 4,500 tons, it justified us bringing our own ship in and half filling a berth to send it. Economically, it made sense. We will get lower shipping charges if you fill an entire hold, which is more like 10,000 tons. There are other ships coming into it about once a week for Brucejack and Red Chris already, and then another couple projects are slated to also produce out of here. The big one being Skeena is also planning to ship out of Stewart. So there's more ships coming into the area, and they're almost at a break point where if more ships come in, then they will also have a tugboat stationed in Stewart. So they don't currently. It has to come all the way from Rupert. It's like an extra $180,000 per ship coming in to get it from Rupert. But once that's based in Stewart, then the cost drops. So if anything, our shipping costs will drop over time as we operate.
Okay.
Yeah.
The historic tailings with that grade sitting there, what's the thoughts on that? And what's your snow maintenance gonna be like on that
highway, the Granduc Highway.
Snow maintenance is gonna be awful. It's,
Great.
there's a lot
It'd
of
be great if
shovelers.
Great if you're a skier, right?
It is great there's this heli ski operation, you can ski down Domino right now if you want to go on a heli ski operation. Snow load it's significant, but Granduc operated in the 70s, it's doable, the road is already there, we have avalanche specialists already hired to kind of come up with a plan and what the costing for that. Brucejack operates in way worse conditions than what we're operating in. What's your first one?
The tailings?
The tailings. The tailings is an opportunity, we've done metallurgy on it. Our preferred option with it is to scoop it up, drive it down the road and run it through Ascot's project so that it sits in their tailings facility. It's not enough to justify doing a DSO on it, like 2 grams. We can't upgrade it high enough. And then we don't want to deal with the residual, the tailings of the tailings. We don't want to have to permit that. So right now our plan would be, if Ascot's operating, we could run it through there. I think it would make sense. We'll just do a cost sharing agreement with that to clean up our tailings. It's about we've estimated it's 160 to 180,000 tons. So it's, you know, in the realm of
10,000 ounces of boat.
something about that.
Thomas would understand that.
Small.
Yeah. But decent at $4,200 gold.
I missed your point on, you said that you can only do one bulk sample every 5 years.
Yes.
right? So, is it now 2028 before you can first start shipping to start cash flow?
Yes.
2028.
2028. Mid 2028 would be our cash flowing part.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just on another note, in a perfect world, what's the dream scenario between you and Ascot? If something comes together, and what's even the likelihood of something like that happening?
We would need to feel certain that our shareholders are going to receive something that is enough value. Like, we would want to have confidence in the equity and whatever we're putting into. One of the challenges with Ascot right now is the debt structure that they have in place. So we wouldn't want to put our shareholders at risk. Right now, if you ask me, I say a toll milling agreement would work very well for us because we're not exposed to any risk. We can make more money toll milling it, and if that entity were to fail again, then we'd be just on the DSO track. Essentially, our permitting for our project, it doesn't matter whether we're going to Ascot or to Taiwan. It's the same permitting of the mine. It's just where does the truck turn left at Ascot, or does it keep going down to the port? So that optionality buys us a lot of flexibility, but also creates a great negotiating point for us as well.
I guess my next question would be, so Ascot's big failure was the lack of, they just didn't have the ore. It's my
They
understanding.
didn't have the development, so they didn't have the ore.
So aside from you guys being the neighbor, basically.
Yep.
There's a few other companies around there that they could then do deals with to have their ore go through that. That's how that would all work if it's successful?
Yeah, but the challenge with that is most of those other ore sources that are potential are 3 to 5 years longer than us, and they require major modifications to the mill because they're polymetallic deposits that would require some other float circuits in it. In the 1990s, they actually sent a bulk sample from Scottie to Westman to the Premier Mine and ran it through it. Both Scottie and Westman were cyanide leach projects, so they had the same metallurgy to recover gold. The other ones have things like copper, lead, zinc that are going to be very problematic to run through a cyanide plant.
So would I be correct in assuming that they actually have to have you to succeed?
That's my supposition, I guess. And right now, like, it's $2.5 to $3 million holding cost for Ascot in care and maintenance for that project. So waiting another 3 years after we're producing is not an enviable position for them to be in.
You also said you only need you need another $120 million over the next 2 years, correct?
130 for the capital cost associated with the building of the mine. We'll need a little
how
bit.
realistic is that 130? Is it not 170 or 180 or 190 or?
It's pretty reasonable at this point. I would say that we don't have a lot of the major complexity factors that a lot of projects that go way over cost budget have. So we don't have the mill to redesign and overdesign and metallurgy to change, and we don't have the tailings facility, which is always like geotechnically a major challenge in the build out for that. The fact that our capital is lower to start with, and that much of the major infrastructures are in place, like A lot of projects run into problems with just the road going into it. It just costs way more to build the road. The road is already there. So I would say that we are closer than most people that have a PA number. Do I know that if it's gonna come right in at 130? I don't. But I think that's what we hope to get with the feasibility. The other thing is, I would say, is that the distance from us from a PEA to 2028 is very close relative to most PEAs that you see. You know, usually they have to go through pre-feasibility into feasibility into permitting and so on. Like, our gap is so much tighter, so the inflationary effects aren't going to be as great as well as other projects.
I'd like to just point out to Ocean Partners has committed $25 million US facility to us for that final build. So take that 130 and take roughly 40 million Canadian off that. So that's already committed to that project. So we have a gap of maybe 80 million. If we're at feasibility in 14 months from today, we're bankable. So we've already laying breadcrumbs down for fixed stream, prepaid gold, so we don't have to raise equity, and so that's, you know, there's not a ton of equity in that, but Ocean Partners essentially is already committed to a third of that.
So that money I was talking about, is it already in the bank against that 120 million, or is that 120 million above what you were talking about?
It's 120 above what I was talking about, but as Brad said, of that 130, 40 is already allocated.
You got 40. Yeah.
We've got 40 in a debt facility that's already there.
So you're looking for about another 80 or 90.
80 million in further financing to build out the project.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
What ounces is the Franco royalty over?
Everything.
Everything? And any new discoveries?
Everything.
Okay, and what was royalty again?
2% GPR.
Okay.
But Franco gave us equity too, and that's very rare. And we're the only project in the history of Franco, Nevada to buy a royalty without a published resource. They've never done that before. So, yeah, they took us to the cleaners to get 2% on everything. But at that time, 2 years ago, when nobody cared, we just thought it was important because that's the best technical team in the world. We're by far the smallest company within their universe. And, you know, and they lend a lot of help, suggestions, and, you know, so we meet about 4 times a year. Very, very, it's a great little partnership. So.
And with the 9 million net on the bulk sample, that's including the royalty payment for Franco as well. So they get a few $100,000 out of that as well.
What happened to the Scottie underground mill?
It's still there.
So it could be rehabilitated?
So I mean, we've had a couple guys go in there and look at it, and basically
Sure.
you could buy a new one for 4 or 5 million, and it would take half the number of workers, and I would have a lot better faith in it. It's pretty rusty down there.
Was it?
Yeah.
So when you ship out of Stewart,
Yeah.
you're still on the Canadian side, do you ever cross?
We cross into Alaska and then back out of Alaska.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no issue with doing
We got 110 trucks across the road this year, and no issues. And Ascot's plan to do Red Mountain also involves them going back up the road the other way.
this. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they got that's permitted through feasibility as well.
Not to cut things off with yourself, and Roger, gonna be around for a little bit.
Yeah, well, sure, you know, we will for questions and, yeah.
We have the room till at least 1:30. So with that, just to formally, I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen for braving Calgary on a less than long day.
Thanks, everyone.